We're learning more about the investigation into a house fire in Sawyer yesterday and the man arrested following it. Investigators say 35-year-old Weston Aho, who was arrested following that fire, is facing unrelated charges stemming from an investigation into neglect of horses. An arrest warrant indicates authorities found a malnourished horse on the property in Sawyer earlier this year and had to have 2 horse carcasses removed. 30-year-old Tori Francis is also charged in that case. Aho was arrested in Velva shortly after the house fire yesterday on warrants unrelated to the fire. Crews had to return to that scene this morning to attend to a flare-up, but Aho was in custody at the time. Now, the state BCI and fire marshal are assisting in the investigation. Aho and Francis made bench warrant appearances on the charges in the horse investigation today in Ward County, and they were released from custody, according to court records. Aho faces a misdemeanor preventing arrest charge in the house fire incident and is scheduled to appear in court in McHenry County next month.